The moment your heart stops beating, something extraordinary begins. Not silence, not an end, but a gentle shift, like stepping out of one room and into another. One where you're still you, but everything feels lighter, slower, more spacious. You're no longer bound by breath or body, yet you're still aware, still present, still thinking, feeling, wondering what just happened. If you've ever lost someone and felt their presence linger, you weren't imagining it. Souls don't immediately vanish. They don't simply disappear into a tunnel of light and close the door behind them. There's a space between here and there, an unseen realm where the soul pauses, reflects, and in many cases, waits. According to Edgar Cayce, often called the sleeping prophet, the soul's journey after death is not instant. It unfolds gradually with deep spiritual intelligence and divine compassion. He described it as a transition, one that mirrors birth in reverse. And just like birth, it takes time. In his readings, Cayce spoke of how some souls remain near the earth plane for days, others for months, some even for years. Why? Because death doesn't immediately dissolve your attachments. Love doesn't switch off like a light. Neither does guilt, fear, or confusion. All of that stays with the soul as it leaves the physical body behind. Imagine you've just stepped outside after spending your entire life inside a single home. At first, the light is too bright. The space feels strange. You're not sure where to go or even what's happening. You try to speak, but no one hears you. You reach out, but your hand passes through. You see your loved ones grieving and you want to comfort them, but you can't. This is the beginning of the in-between. For many souls, this moment is filled with disorientation, especially for those who passed suddenly or with unresolved emotions. The soul looks around, not quite understanding what has happened. Some don't even realize they've died. That's not uncommon. Cayce described it like waking from a long dream. You recognize the world, but it doesn't respond to you in the same way anymore. And so many linger. They hover near the hospital bed, the crash site, or the family home, not out of fear, not always, but out of love, out of longing, out of the desire to make sure everyone else is okay. Some watch over their children, sitting at the edge of their bed each night. Some attend their own funerals, listening to the eulogies, observing who cried and who didn't, not in judgment, just witnessing. And yet, for the soul, time no longer flows like it does for the living. What may feel like days to you could feel like minutes to them, or what feels like moments to us could feel like years in their realm. That's because once you step out of the body, you also step out of linear time. There's no ticking clock in the spiritual realm, only waves of experience. Edgar Cayce explained that emotions are the true anchors. It isn't death that holds a soul near the earth, it's emotion. If you lived a life filled with unresolved anger, shame, or regret, those emotions don't disappear at death. You take them with you. And they can act like chains, keeping you close to the realm you just left. But so can love. Think of a mother who passes, worried for her children. She may choose to stay close until she feels they're safe, or a man who never told his brother he forgave him. That weight, that lingering energy, can pull the soul toward familiar places and people, seeking resolution. And sometimes, the living can feel this, that sudden chill in the air, the smell of their cologne, the flicker in the corner of your eye. These aren't coincidences. They are echoes, soul imprints, evidence that the journey isn't over. In ancient traditions, there's a reason the first 3 days after death are considered sacred. In those hours, the soul is often still near, observing, processing, preparing. Cayce confirmed this in multiple readings. He said that for the average soul, the realization of transition occurs around the 3rd day. That's when the soul begins to understand. They're no longer part of the physical realm. But not every soul reaches that point so quickly. Some remain tethered for far longer. sometimes for weeks, months, or even years, especially when death was traumatic or sudden. The soul, unable to process what has happened, becomes stuck, not in punishment, but in pause, in confusion. In these cases, spiritual guides often step in. Cayce described them as loving beings, sometimes appearing as angels, sometimes as familiar loved ones, who come to help the soul cross into the next stage. They offer comfort, clarity, a gentle reminder it's time to go home. But here's the part most people don't understand. That home is different for every soul. Some see the light, others feel it. Some are drawn by music or a voice they haven't heard in lifetimes. Cayce taught that the light isn't one size fits all. It manifests according to the soul's readiness, their beliefs, and their emotional state. For some, it arrives quickly. For others, it waits until they are ready to see it. There is no judgment in this process, no punishment, no rush. The universe meets each soul exactly where they are. This is where you come in. If someone you love has passed, and you've felt their presence, it's possible they're still nearby. Not trapped, not suffering, but choosing, for now, to linger. And your actions, your thoughts, your emotions, they matter. The more you release them with love, the more you speak to them in your heart with peace, the more you help them move forward. Sometimes they just need to hear, "It's okay, you can go now, I love you, I'll be okay." That moment of release, from your side and theirs, is one of the most healing transitions in existence, because in that moment, both the living and the departed move one step closer to freedom. When the soul separates from the body, there is no loud crack, no thunder, no drama. It is quiet, gentle, almost anticlimactic, and yet it's the most profound transition you will ever make. In that exact moment you begin to slip out of form. What you once thought was you, your hands, your voice, your heartbeat, become something you now observe rather than inhabit. You are no longer in the body, you are around it. According to Edgar Cayce, the soul does not experience death as we imagine it. It doesn't come with panic or fear. In fact, for most, it's a release, a letting go, a sense of expansion, like stretching out after being confined in a small space for too long. He described it as the release of consciousness. The spirit gently lifts, and suddenly the world that once felt solid becomes fluid. The physical fades into the background, and what once seemed invisible becomes obvious. And yet for the soul, the first sensation is often confusion. You may look down and see your body still silent, familiar. You may wonder, why am I there and here? You try to speak, but there is no mouth. You reach out to touch, but there is no hand. You realize your thoughts are still intact, your emotions still alive, but the form you used to carry them is gone. That moment, Cayce said, is often met with a profound sense of peace and disorientation. You feel free, weightless, unburdened by pain or tension, yet you also feel adrift, like walking into a room where no one can see or hear you. It is here, in this subtle realm, that the soul becomes aware it is no longer part of the physical dimension. Many souls, especially those not expecting to die, don't immediately realize what's happened. They try to speak to the nurses, the paramedics, the family gathered around. They shout, wave, cry out, but no one responds. It's not cruelty. It's simply that the soul has stepped into a different vibrational reality, and the physical world no longer registers its presence. But the soul sees everything. You see the tears, you hear the prayers, you feel the grief pouring out from those you love. You may even feel more connected to them now than when you were alive. This is why so many people report feeling the presence of loved ones immediately after their passing, because the soul doesn't immediately ascend. It hovers, it witnesses, it absorbs. Cayce described this phase as one of gentle awakening. The soul, now operating from a higher frequency, begins to acclimate to its new state of being. Time becomes irrelevant. Space loses its boundaries. A minute might feel like an hour might feel like an instant. The soul floats, not in a vacuum, but in a dimension just beyond the senses. In many of his transcessions, Cayce spoke of this as the realm of etheric energy, a space just slightly out of phase with our physical world. In this dimension, thought becomes movement, feeling becomes direction. If you think of a place, you are there. If you think of a person, you are beside them. Not limited by distance or time, the soul begins to explore its new freedom, like a child learning how to walk again, but now without legs. One of the most consistent accounts from near-death experiences also mirrors this perfectly. People often report floating above their body, looking down at the scene of their own death. They describe with stunning clarity the conversations in the room, the clothing people were wearing, even the small details others later confirm. These aren't hallucinations. These are the first moments of consciousness untethered from form, kind of lucid awakening into your original essence. This is sometimes called the watching your body phenomenon. And it's real, because for a brief time, minutes for some, longer for others, you exist in a state where you're both aware of the physical world and no longer bound by it. You see the boundaries of your previous life dissolve, and yet you don't feel lost. Just curious, free, a little unsure of what comes next. And it's in this very space, this sacred pause, that the soul has a choice, to linger or to move toward the light. But that choice isn't always conscious, at least not at first. Some souls stay because they want to say goodbye. Others don't realize they've passed and continue trying to live their normal routines, confused when no one notices them. Cayce said that these souls need compassion, not fear. They are not to be judged or banished. They are simply finding their bearings. And just like a newborn doesn't run before it crawls, the newly departed don't always ascend immediately. Some watch over their families. Some walk the halls of the hospital where they passed. Some return to old homes, drawn to familiar places. It's not because they're stuck. It's because they're still in the process of remembering who they really are. You see, the body isn't just something we live in. It's something we identify with. We spend our entire lives saying, "This is me," while pointing to our skin, our eyes, our voice. So when that part falls away, it takes time for the soul to stop identifying with the form it no longer needs. The habits of identity run deep. And just like waking up from a vivid dream, the soul must adjust to the truth of its own boundless nature. That truth is liberating and humbling. You are not your body. You never were. And yet, the body was a sacred vessel, an instrument through which your soul played its unique melody on earth. So when you step out of it, you don't feel nothing. You feel gratitude. Sometimes sorrow. Often wonder. May even be greeted. Many souls report encounters with light beings, ancestors, or spiritual guides in the moments following death. Cayce confirmed this in his readings as well. He described these guides as beings of higher consciousness whose role is to comfort, inform, and gently prepare the soul for what comes next. But their presence isn't forced. They appear only when the soul is ready, when the emotional charge begins to settle and awareness deepens. Until then, the soul floats, observes, breathes in the stillness of its new state, and maybe, just maybe, it lingers beside someone like you, watching you, loving you, whispering one last message before it moves on to the next part of its eternal journey. Not every soul is ready to leave right away, even after the initial release, after that gentle moment of floating and witnessing. There's something that holds many souls close to this realm, and that something is emotion. Edgar Cayce made it clear in his readings, it's not the body that binds the soul to the earth, it's the energy, the emotional imprint left behind. When a soul departs with unresolved pain, guilt, longing, or fear, that emotional frequency can anchor it to the physical plane. The body dies, but the emotions remain. Think of it like a magnet. Every grudge, every regret, every unspoken truth pulls at the soul like a thread refusing to let go. Sometimes it's subtle. A mother worried about her children. A man who died suddenly, still processing the shock. a young soul with dreams unfulfilled. These aren't ghosts in the way we fear them. These are souls, processing, lingering, trying to understand what just happened and what to do next. You might wonder, why wouldn't they just move on? Why not go toward the light and be free? Because for the soul, what matters most is love. And sometimes that love feels unfinished, incomplete, not ready to be released. It's why so many souls stay for their own funerals. They stand in the back of the room, watching their families speak. They move through the crowd not as shadows, but as energy, felt in the goosebumps on someone's skin, the sudden wave of emotion that doesn't make sense, the flicker of a candle without a breeze. They're not haunting, they're witnessing. They want to know, do they know I loved them? Did they forgive me? Did they understand what I meant? For those left behind, it might feel like déjà vu, like their presence is still nearby, and that's because in many cases it is. Cayce explained that many souls remain within the earth vibration until they feel complete. Not in a negative sense, but in a healing one. Just as you wouldn't leave a room before finishing a conversation, the soul doesn't always leave a life without finishing what it came here to feel. Some return to the homes they loved. Others visit friends, walking through old memories like rooms in a house, not to relive, but to release. You might feel this presence in moments of stillness, in dreams, in music, or when you say their name and your chest tightens, not with grief, but with recognition. From the soul's perspective, time isn't what we think it is. What feels like a long month to you could pass in a blink for them. They exist outside of clocks. Their experience is measured not in hours, but in awareness. The depth of what they're processing determines how long they linger. Some complete this quickly, others take longer. But always it is guided by divine intelligence. Cayce described this in a beautiful way. He said that the soul is given time to adjust, especially if death was traumatic or unexpected. During this adjustment, emotional bonds act as bridges between the physical and spiritual. Love is one of those bridges. So is grief. So is regret. These emotions aren't bad, they're powerful. But if they're not understood, they can act like fog, obscuring the light. And so the soul pauses, not in punishment, not in confusion, but in compassion. This is where the presence of the living becomes crucial, because your emotions don't just affect your own healing, they affect theirs. If you are holding on to blame, resentment, or fear, the soul can feel it. If you're trapped in guilt or clinging to what was, that vibration can call the soul back again and again, not because they're stuck, but because they care, because they're trying to help you let go, so they can do the same. In this way, death is not a separation, it's a mirror. What you heal in yourself creates space for them to rise. What you forgive, what you speak out loud, even in solitude, reaches them, because energy has no barrier. Thought has no border. When you think of them with love, they feel it. When you say, I'm sorry, they hear it. And when you say, I forgive you, they are free. Cayce often said that emotional energy is the most powerful force on earth. It moves faster than light. It creates reality. And after death, it is the primary language the soul uses to communicate. No longer bound by words, they speak through feeling, through impressions, through synchronicities. Have you ever had a dream so vivid it felt more real than waking life, where someone you loved appeared, not as a memory but as a presence? That wasn't just a dream. That was communion. That was the soul reaching back, visiting, healing, whispering, I'm still here, but I'm learning to let go. In his trance sessions, Cayce said something remarkable. He explained that souls are often surprised at how strong the pull to earth can be. Many don't expect it. They imagine a smooth release into light and peace. But when emotion is unresolved, that pull becomes magnetic. Not tormenting, but magnetic. The soul wants peace, but it also wants understanding. And that's where you come in again. Because peace for them often begins with peace from you. So if there's someone you've lost and it still feels heavy, speak to them. Not out loud if it feels strange, but in your heart. Write them a letter, light a candle, sit in silence and tell them what you never said. That act of communication, pure, sincere, unfiltered, can shift everything. It creates an opening, a spiritual corridor, and through it the soul receives not just words, but release. There are many stories, quiet ones, of people who've done this and then felt something lift. The heaviness in the room, the dreams that stopped, the sense of someone finally resting. That isn't coincidence. That is completion. Because once a soul feels its presence is no longer needed, once the love has been expressed, the forgiveness given, the truth acknowledged, the bond transforms. No longer a tether, it becomes a blessing. No longer a weight, it becomes light. And in that light, the soul begins to rise. Eventually, the soul begins to loosen its grip on the physical world. The intense pull of earthly emotion fades, and the longing to understand what comes next grows stronger. It's not a conscious decision like choosing to walk through a door. It's more like gravity shifting, a natural draw toward something softer, wider, brighter. This is the beginning of what Edgar Cayce called the borderland. It's not earth, but it's not heaven either. It's a threshold, a space between dimensions. You might think of it as the soul's waiting room, but not in the way we imagine waiting. There's no boredom here, no passivity. This is an active, sacred stage of deep reflection. It's where the soul begins to remember who it really is and why it came to earth in the first place. In Cayce's readings, the borderland is a realm of energetic refinement. Here, the soul is still close enough to earth to sense familiar emotions and places, but distant enough to begin detaching from their intensity. The confusion starts to lift. Awareness sharpens. The soul is no longer trying to hold on to life. It's beginning to observe it. This idea isn't unique to Cayce. In fact, it echoes teachings from ancient wisdom traditions around the world. In Tibetan Buddhism, it's known as the bardo, the transitional state between death and rebirth. The bardo is a place of vision, of unfolding, of great inner confrontation. The soul sees itself not through the lens of ego, but through the pure eyes of consciousness. And here's where it gets profound. One of the most consistent experiences shared across cultures, across spiritual traditions, and across near-death accounts is the life review. Cayce described it as a panorama of memory, where the soul sees its entire life, every moment, every choice, every word, every intention, passing before its awareness like waves of light. But it's not just watching, it's feeling. You don't just remember what you did, you feel how it impacted others. You experience the ripple of your kindness, you feel the weight of your anger. You witness the consequences of your choices, not as punishment but as clarity. Because this isn't judgment, it's understanding. It's the soul returning to truth. Imagine seeing a moment where you offered a kind word to a stranger and feeling the relief it gave them in their darkest hour, or reliving a harsh exchange and feeling in your own energy the pain it left behind, not to punish you, but to awaken you. This is what the borderland is for, to see clearly, to remember, to shed the illusions you carried and to begin the great healing. And the soul is never alone in this process. Cayce spoke often of guides, beings of light, wisdom and compassion, who meet the soul in this realm. Sometimes they take the form of ancestors or loved ones who passed before you. Other times they appear as radiant presences, familiar, but not from this lifetime. They are here not to lead, but to assist, not to command, but to support. They don't give you answers. They help you find your own. Their presence alone is enough to bring peace to even the most restless soul. They hold space while you review your life. They radiate forgiveness when you struggle with regret. They remind you that no part of your journey was wasted, that every experience, whether joyful or painful, was part of your evolution. This space between realms is not linear. The soul is not progressing through rooms or corridors, it's unfolding inward. peeling back the layers of identity and story until only truth remains, and that truth is simple. You were never the roles you played. You were always the soul behind them. In this liminal state, the soul also begins to sense its next calling. For some it's a return to the spiritual home, a place of rest, reflection, and higher learning. For others, it may be preparation for another journey, a new incarnation, a new lesson, another chance to love more deeply. But that choice doesn't come until the soul is ready, until the review is complete, until the heaviness has lifted, until the resonance of earth has softened enough that the light becomes more than an invitation. It becomes an inner pull. Cayce said, "The borderland is a gift. It's where the soul does its most important healing. It's where we see the truth about who we were, without ego or denial. And it's where we begin to remember our divine origin, not as an idea, but as a knowing. Here, the soul sheds not just the physical body, but the emotional imprints, the traumas, the false identities, and it does so with love, with grace, with support. It is in this realm where the soul finally understands, I was never alone, not even for a moment, and everything I experienced, every joy, every wound, every connection, was part of my return to wholeness." You may wonder what this means for you now, as someone still living, still breathing, still walking the earth. The answer is everything, because your awareness of this process changes the way you live. It changes how you treat others. It changes how you forgive, how you love, how you show up every day. When you know that you will one day stand in the borderland and feel the truth of every word you've spoken, every intention you've held, it humbles you. It softens you. It brings you closer to your soul, even now. And if you've lost someone recently, if you feel their energy around you, they may be in this very realm, watching, reflecting, being guided, healing. And in your moments of silence, of meditation, of remembrance, you may meet them there, not in dreams alone, but in the space between thoughts, the space where your soul and theirs still recognize each other. That is the borderland, a realm of light, memory, compassion, and choice, not a place of endings, but a sacred pause. Before the soul remain near the earth after death, Edgar Cayce was asked this question more than once, and his answer was both simple and profound. He said, 3 days or 3 years? But what determines the difference? Why does one soul pass through the veil quickly while another lingers unseen for what feels like ages? It has everything to do with readiness, not physical, but emotional, energetic, spiritual. The first key factor is attachment. If a soul lived a life deeply entangled in the material world, whether through relationships, possessions, power, or even unresolved trauma, it doesn't just let go because the heart stops beating. The soul might remain close, hovering around the familiar, not out of punishment, but out of habit, out of love, out of fear of what might come next. Cayce explained that attachment acts like a gravitational pull. The heavier the emotional weight, the more the soul is drawn toward Earth's frequency. These attachments can be noble, like a parent wanting to protect their child, or painful, like a person who never found peace with themselves. Either way, the soul can feel obligated to stay until something shifts. Then there's the clarity of purpose. A soul that lived with conscious intention, that understood itself as more than the body, often moves through the transition more smoothly. Cayce emphasized the importance of spiritual understanding while we're still alive, because when a soul crosses over with clarity, knowing that death is just a step, not a stop, there's less resistance, less confusion. The light is recognized not as a mystery, but as home. But many souls don't cross with that clarity, especially if their lives ended abruptly. A car crash, a sudden illness, a violent moment. These deaths can jolt the soul into a state of shock. Imagine waking up in a room you don't recognize, without memory of how you got there. That's what it can feel like, disoriented, unanchored. Cayce said that souls who pass under such conditions often need more time, sometimes years, to process what happened and accept the transition. There's also the level of spiritual development, not in a hierarchical sense, but in terms of inner awareness. Souls that have done the work, who've meditated, prayed, forgiven, served, or simply lived with a heart open to truth, tend to move more swiftly through the layers of transition. Because they're not clinging to illusions, they've already made peace with the idea that they are not the body, that this world is temporary, that there's more beyond the veil. But even for these souls, lingering isn't always a delay, sometimes it's a choice. Cayce mentioned that highly evolved souls may choose to remain nearby for a time, not because they're stuck, but because they have work to do, comforting the grieving, whispering truth to the living, protecting, guiding. These souls become the gentle voices in our intuition, the dream visitors, the presence we feel when we need strength the most. And then there's the role of ritual. It might surprise you, but Cayce placed deep importance on how the living support the dead. Funeral rituals, prayers, sacred words, all of it matters. Not for the sake of tradition alone, but for energy. Focused, loving intention from the living creates a kind of bridge. It reminds the soul of where it came from. It helps orient them, especially in the first few days. When the soul is still so close it can hear your voice, feel your thoughts, and be nourished by your love. Cultures around the world have always honored this time. In ancient Egypt, the soul was said to travel through the duat, the underworld, for 3 days before facing judgment. In Tibetan Buddhism, the Bardo period spans 49 days of transition. In Christianity, Jesus himself is said to have risen on the 3rd day. These aren't just myths. They are echoes of a deeper truth, that the soul's release is not immediate, it is sacred, and it is supported by ritual. But when that support is missing, when death is met with denial, suppression, or disbelief, the soul can falter, especially if the person didn't believe in life after death at all. Cayce warned that disbelief can create a kind of fog. If a soul dies believing that death is the end, it may be slow to recognize the light. It may stay in a state of confusion, replaying memories, trying to go back to the routines of life. Not because it's being punished, but because it simply doesn't realize there's anything else to do, and that fog can last. Sometimes it's not disbelief alone, it's addiction. A person who spent a lifetime chasing substances, lust, greed, or obsession may carry those cravings into the spirit world. But now, without a body to satisfy them, those cravings become restless. The soul may hover around places of temptation, drawn to familiar energy, trying to feed an appetite that no longer fits its form. It's one of the saddest forms of lingering, because it's not about love or healing. It's about forgetting who they are. This is why healing work in life is so important. Every wound you tend to, every emotion you resolve, every attachment you release, it's not just for this lifetime. It's preparation. It's spiritual training for the moment of transition. Because death does not liberate you from what you haven't faced. It reveals it. But here's the hope. Even souls that linger for years are never truly lost. Cayce said that the universe is patient, that spiritual guides, guardian angels, and even your own higher self will never abandon you. They wait. They whisper. They send signs, dreams, synchronicities, nudges toward the light. And when the soul is ready, no matter how long it has been, the next step will appear. That's the grace of the universe. Whether it takes 3 days or 3 years, you are never alone in your journey, and neither are the ones you've loved and lost. If you've ever felt something subtle, a whisper in the quiet, a familiar presence that seemed to come out of nowhere, you're not imagining it. You're sensing what Cayce and countless mystics have long confirmed: the soul lingers, and sometimes it reaches back. These moments don't always arrive with fanfare. In fact, they usually slip in like a breath of wind through a closed window, but when they do, you feel it. One of the most common ways a soul communicates its presence is through dreams, but not just any dreams. These are different. They're luminous, vivid, unforgettable. You wake up with the sense that something real happened, that it wasn't just a memory but a meeting. Often the departed appears younger, radiant, whole. They don't speak with words, yet you understand everything. They don't stay long, but they leave you with peace, or sometimes a message. These are called visitation dreams, and they're sacred. Cayce affirmed that in the dream state, when your conscious mind is quiet, your soul becomes more receptive to spiritual frequencies. This is why those who've passed may use dreams to reconnect. It's not imagination, it's resonance. You're meeting them halfway, in the space where veils grow thin. Other times, the signs are physical. Flickering lights, electronic glitches, clocks that stop at the moment of death. These aren't random. Souls, especially those still close to the earth plane, often influence electricity. Why? Because spirit is energy, and energy interacts with energy. It's not uncommon to feel a light bulb buzz, a TV turn on by itself, or a song play on the radio that meant something deeply personal. These are the soul's way of saying, I'm here, I remember, I haven't left. You might catch a familiar scent, perfume, tobacco, old books, gardenias. When there's no source around, scent is one of the most direct triggers of memory, and souls use it to stir something in you. That sudden wave of nostalgia, that moment when the air feels different, charged. These are energetic imprints. They're real, they're intimate, and they're intentional. Sometimes it's a sensation, a soft touch on the shoulder, a gentle brush across your hair, a warmth around your hands when you pray. You might get goosebumps, not from cold, but from presence. A feeling of being seen, held, remembered. Cayce explained that these encounters happen most when the soul is trying to comfort or complete something, and often they'll visit more than one person. Death doesn't limit their reach. A soul can be with a daughter in grief, a spouse in prayer, and a best friend halfway across the world, all in the same stretch of time. Because they're no longer bound by physical laws. They move through emotion, through intention, through love. You may notice that some people in the family have more of these experiences than others. That's not about worthiness, it's about openness. The soul goes where the energy flows. If your heart is soft, if your mind is quiet, if your grief is open rather than shut tight, you're more likely to feel them. But sometimes their presence lingers not just because of you, but because of them. There's an important distinction Cayce made between the soul and the spirit. He described the soul as the evolving essence, the eternal traveler carrying memory and growth. The spirit, however, is the divine spark, the pure light of God within each being. And while the spirit always moves toward the source, the soul can hover, revisit, explore. This means when you feel their presence, you're sensing their soul energy. The echo of who they were, still vibrant, still aware, still growing. And yet at a higher level, their spirit may already be resting in divine unity. These two aspects operate simultaneously. One is cosmic, the other is personal. So when you sense them near, you're not holding them back. You're simply in relationship with the part of them that still remembers Earth, the part that still loves you in the form they once wore. But here's the deeper truth. You play a role in this connection. Your thoughts, your emotions, your intentions, they reach them. Cayce emphasized that consciousness doesn't stop at death. The soul is still responsive, still in dialogue, not through words but through energy. When you think of them with fear, they feel it. When you grieve in silence but carry unspoken blame, they feel that too. But when you speak to them with love, with honesty, with gratitude, it creates a bridge, an open channel, a release. Your intention matters more than you know. Lighting a candle, whispering a prayer, writing them a letter. These aren't small acts, they're invitations. They say, I see you, I'm listening, I'm ready to feel. And the soul responds, sometimes in subtle ways, sometimes in powerful waves that move through your entire body. You'll find yourself crying without sadness, smiling without cause, feeling peace you didn't expect. That's not random, that's them releasing, rising, healing through you. And over time, that presence may begin to fade. Not because they've forgotten, not because you're losing the connection, but because they've healed enough to move further into the light. And in that light, they become less a presence you feel, and more a part of you. Integrated, eternal, no longer a separate echo, but a silent guide within your very soul. That's how it works. The soul doesn't disappear, it transforms. And the signs they leave behind, they're not meant to haunt you. They're reminders that love never dies. Once the soul has lingered, visited, and begun its journey inward, the deeper healing begins. Not the kind of healing we imagine here on earth, physical, emotional, momentary, but a profound unraveling of identity, pain, and illusion. In the borderland, this sacred space between the worlds, the soul begins to shed everything that isn't true. It's not instant. It's not a button the universe presses that wipes away the past. It's a process, a sacred unfolding, and it's as individual as the life that preceded it. In this state, the soul moves into what Cayce described as the Hall of Records, not a physical place, but an energetic space where the full tapestry of your life is laid bare. The emotions, the intentions, the causes and effects, not as judgment, but as clarity. You see what was real, what was driven by fear, where you loved fully, and where you held back. This is where the healing deepens. Here, the soul is often met by guides, beings of light, wisdom, and exquisite compassion. Cayce referred to them as teachers of the soul, life review guides. They are not harsh, they do not scold. Their only purpose is to reflect truth, to help the soul remember why it came, what it learned, what it avoided, what it still can. When the soul is ready, they ask the questions that matter most. Did you love well? Did you forgive? Did you become more of who you truly are? These questions aren't asked with expectation. They're asked to open space within the soul, to bring hidden pain to the surface, to allow the wounds of earth to rise, and finally, to release. Because that's what this part of the journey is all about. The body is already gone, but the emotions, the attachments, the false beliefs, those remain. The soul carries them into the borderland like shadows still clinging to light. Regret, guilt, shame, even denial. These patterns don't just dissolve on their own. They must be seen, acknowledged, loved. Only then can they be let go. This is why some souls stay in this state longer than others. It's not because they're being punished. It's because they're healing, sorting through lifetimes of identity, unpacking old stories, letting the false self fade so that the true essence can emerge, whole, radiant, free. And here's something many people don't realize. You can help, even from Earth, even now. Cayce taught that the thoughts and prayers of the living are like medicine to the soul in transition. When you send love, not fear, not grief, but love, it reaches them. It creates waves of clarity. It helps dissolve the density of emotional pain. When you forgive someone who has passed, truly forgive them, that forgiveness echoes in their realm. It becomes a balm, a release. It tells the soul, you don't have to carry this anymore. I release you. I understand. Even just speaking their name with gentleness, it matters. Your voice, your intention, your quiet moments of remembrance, they are felt. Because in the borderland, souls are not distracted. They are deeply attuned, and the vibration of your love creates movement in their world. There are even stories, many of them, where unresolved issues were finally healed after death. Children who forgave absent parents, partners who released betrayal, siblings who made peace through dreams, And when that healing happens, it sets both souls free, because healing isn't one-sided. As they heal, so do you. And as you heal, you give them permission to rise higher. This is the divine partnership between the living and the dead. We're not separate. We're dancing in different rooms of the same house. And when we choose love over bitterness, peace over clinging, surrender over control, we open every door between those rooms. This process, this soul-level healing, can be gentle or it can be intense. For some, the light becomes visible quickly. They're ready to rise, to merge, to move into the next realm of learning. For others, the borderland becomes a sanctuary, a sacred space of recovery, restoration, and realization. But there is no timeline. There is no judgment. There is only love and patience and infinite grace. Because the soul has all the time it needs to remember itself. And when it finally does, when the last layer falls away and the soul sees its own light reflected back in the faces of the guides, in the hearts of those still living, in the memory of its own divine purpose, it begins to let go of the pain, of the fear, of the story. And then it begins to ascend. Not away from us, but toward truth, toward source, toward peace. At a certain point in the soul's healing, something begins to shimmer in the distance, not with brightness alone, but with recognition. It isn't just a light. It's the light, the one every soul instinctively remembers, the one that feels like home, like eternity, like love unbound by time or memory. It calls, but it does not command. It invites, but it does not pressure. It simply waits, radiant, patient, eternal. Going to the light is a phrase many have heard, but few truly understand what it means. It's not a tunnel you walk through, it's not a doorway that appears in the clouds. The light is not external, it's not somewhere you go, it's something you awaken to. It begins inside the soul, as a pull, a vibration, a calling. It doesn't shout, it hums. And the more the soul heals, the louder that hum becomes. Cayce described this moment as the soul recognizing the divine within itself. He said the light is not the same for everyone. It is tailored to your soul's experience, your beliefs, your level of spiritual understanding. For some, it appears as a radiant figure, Jesus, a bodhisattva, a parent who passed long ago. For others, it's a golden horizon, a garden, a star, a vibration that sings. It appears in the way you need it most, not to trick you, not to judge you, but to meet you where you are. This is why two souls can die at the same moment and have completely different experiences. One may be ready, flowing straight into the light with joy and ease. Another may hesitate, unsure, unprepared, still tethered by emotion or belief. And yes, some souls hesitate, not because they don't see the light, but because they don't believe they deserve it. This is one of the great tragedies of misunderstanding spiritual truth. So many carry guilt into the afterlife. Guilt for how they lived. Guilt for the people they hurt. Guilt for things they never said or things they said too often. They see the light, but it feels too pure, too perfect, and so they turn away. Not realizing that the light is not asking for perfection. It's offering wholeness. Others hesitate out of fear. Not fear of pain, but fear of change. Letting go of earth, even after death, can feel like losing everything familiar. The soul wonders, what if I go and can't come back? What if I forget who I was? What if I disappear? These questions aren't punished, they're honored. Cayce was clear. Every soul is met with compassion, not condemnation. And for those who hesitate, who pause at the edge of the light, there is always help. Higher beings, those same luminous guides from the borderland, stepped forward. They don't pull, they don't pressure, they remind, they illuminate, they nudge, gently, with love that can't be measured. Sometimes they offer visions of lifetimes yet to come, of the soul's own beauty, of the purpose it was born from. Sometimes they say nothing at all. They simply stand in presence, holding the soul in silence until the inner readiness blooms. Because that's what it comes down to, readiness. The light cannot be forced, it can only be received. And receiving requires surrender, letting go of what was, of what could have been, of what never was. It's in this surrender that the soul truly rises, not upward, not outward, but inward, deeper into its own divinity. And when the soul finally steps, or floats, or dissolves into the light, there is no resistance, no doubt, just the most profound sense of coming home, not to a place, but to a truth. To a state of being so filled with grace, so whole, that the soul no longer remembers what it means to fear or separate or suffer. Cayce described it as the soul being absorbed into awareness, not erased, not lost, but fully aligned with the higher self, with the source, with the creative force behind all life. And yet the story doesn't end there, because the light is not a final destination, it's a beginning. From this place of union the soul may rest, learn, reconnect with its soul group, prepare for new missions, or in some cases, return to earth. But none of that happens until the light has been embraced, until the soul has said yes, not with words, but with presence, with trust. So if you've ever wondered what going to the light really means, it's this. It's remembering what you are, and finally choosing to become it. After the soul steps into the light, after the healing, the review, the remembering, another choice quietly begins to emerge. It's not a decision made with words or logic. It's a pull from within the core of the soul itself. Some souls return, others ascend. Cayce often spoke of this as the soul's next assignment, not in the way we think of jobs or duties, but as a continuation of its evolutionary journey. No soul is stagnant. Consciousness is always expanding, always moving toward unity with the divine. But how that expansion unfolds, that varies from soul to soul. One path is reincarnation, a return to earth, or to another realm like it. Not as a punishment, not as karma repaying some cosmic debt, but as a soul-driven decision. Cayce described it as an opportunity to grow, to complete, to remember more of God. Some souls choose to come back because they left things unfinished. Others return to help, to teach, to balance what was left unbalanced. And sometimes they come back simply because they love us. Yes, love pulls the soul forward, but it can also pull it back, not in a way that holds it down, but in a way that inspires it to keep serving. There are souls walking this earth today who have lived hundreds of lifetimes, not because they were forced to, but because they chose to. And that choice doesn't happen instantly. According to Cayce, there's a waiting period before any soul reincarnates. It's a time of rest, review, and reassessment. In the spirit realm, this is where soul groups reconnect. Those timeless bonds of souls who travel together through lifetimes, playing different roles. Parent in one life, child in the next, enemy then teacher, stranger then soulmate. We meet again and again until the learning is complete. These soul groups operate under what Cayce called spiritual contracts, agreements made not in ink but in energy, contracts not of obligation but of intent. You and the people closest to you, your deepest joys, your sharpest wounds. You chose each other, again and again, to grow, to evolve, to reflect the truth of who you are. And sometimes, after death, the soul meets those same souls again, this time in their true form, not as roles or personalities, but as radiant beings of light. There's laughter, there's remembering, there's reunion beyond anything this world can show you. From there the soul decides. Is there more I wish to experience in form? Is there more love I want to give or receive? Is there a deeper truth I long to express? If yes, then the soul begins to prepare for a new incarnation. It selects circumstances, lessons, companions. not with ego, but with wisdom. And when the time is right, it descends again, into time, into space, into another sacred chance to awaken. But for others, the answer is no. The soul, having learned what it came to learn, having remembered its true nature, begins to rise into higher realms of being. These realms aren't places, they're states of consciousness, dimensions of light, harmony, creativity and service, not static heavens but living, evolving expressions of divine mind. In these realms, the soul doesn't lose its identity, it expands it. You don't stop being you. You become more fully you than you ever were in a body. You remember all your lifetimes, your soul's purpose, your connection to all beings. And from there, some souls choose to serve as guides, helping others through the very journey they once walked themselves. Whether the soul returns or ascends, there is no wrong path, because every path is sacred, every soul is guided, and no soul is ever truly lost. Even those who linger for decades, even those who deny the light, even those who leave this world in despair, they are seen, known, loved, and slowly they are healed. That is the promise of the universe, the silent vow of spirit to every soul. You will never be abandoned. You will never be forgotten. You will always be led home. So if you've feared death, let that fear soften. If you've wondered about a loved one who passed, know they are not alone. And if you've questioned what comes next for you, trust that something greater is already preparing a place, not as an ending, but as a beginning. Because the soul never stops moving. It never stops learning. It never stops becoming. And one day, when the time is right, you'll remember this truth not just in thought, but in light. Until then, live with love, forgive without delay, and speak to the ones you've lost, because even now they are listening.